welcome to another bonus episode of How We Made Your Mother. We are calling these bonus episodes General Questions. General Questions. I don't know why. It still makes me laugh. I'm here, as always, with my dear friend and How I Met Your Mother co-creator, Craig Thomas. Hello, Craig.
Hello, Josh. Happy to be here.
It's great to be here. It's been a minute. We took a little break.
It's been a few weeks.
Yeah.
And we have our lovely producer, Alek and I've never called you lovely, and I'll never do it again. So just enjoy that. Lovely. Our lovely producer nailed it.
Thank you.
Well, we are answering all your questions from episode 5 of How I Met Your Mother, which is called Okay Awesome, written by Chris Harris. We did a deep dive recently into the episode. This is the one where the gang goes to the nightclub and no one can hear anyone. So half the episode subtitled in a genius move. And Marshall and Lily are escaping from their wine and cheese boring adult party to join them. So Alek, tell us what happened. What was the viewer listener mail like?
We got lots of questions, as we have every time, through Instagram. Let's I'm going to ask this one, but then I'm going to broaden it out a little bit. Sam_Ashwood says, was Marshall's dance outlined in the script or mostly ad-lib during filming? Love the show. Thank you for the endless hours of entertainment. Now on my, a big number, how many times that he's rewatched. I think I've lost count years ago. He says, my memory is not as good as Ted's. We talked a little in the main episode about the choreography of that. But a lot of people want to know about, was that made up? Did they make that up? Did they improvise that?
It was choreographed to a T. I remember Jason being like, I don't dance. I don't know how to do this. And I think her name, God, I hope her name is Kayla, I think, who is the choreographer of the episode, is the woman Barney was dancing with and never saw her face and turns out to be his cousin. Spoilers. And so she did a great job. I'm sure in the script we wrote a few things, like I'm assuming we wrote Marshall does some robot. We probably like name dropped a few weird little like 90s era dance moves. But no, all credit to her and to Jason. They worked really hard on that. Pam Fryman, our director, shot the hell out of that thing. And it was very down to the tiniest movement choreographed. And
Jason might have been scared, but you can tell from the look on his face when he's dancing, he was having a blast.
He got into it. He definitely got into it.
But he was also on an unnamed substance, we think.
Yes, he was.
So Josh, broadening that out, how much they're using, ad-lib and improv a little, generically here, but I mean, because people keep on wanting you guys to have made things up on the spot. Can you talk a little bit about this? A bigger question of what are you doing as an actor? You have words on the page.
Well, yeah, I mean,
what's yours? What's theirs?
It's worth considering this. Like the implication is Jason just started dancing, and like we like caught that. You can't do that. There's 4 cameras going. There's extras who are being corralled and directed by the second AD. There's so many moving parts and pieces. Plus, it's a 22 and a half minute story that has 40 to 60 scenes in it that are kind of choreographed and written just to be part of this functioning machine. I don't want to overuse that word, but it was like really tightly scripted. What you could do is kind of, at the end of a scene, there might be a little bit. There might have been a moment in rehearsal where you say, "Hey, would it be funny if Ted did this?" And you would negotiate it with. But there wasn't a ton of like. I think the idea is like a Judd Apatow movie or a Cassavetes movie where they just kind of roll the camera and the actors just do lots of things. And I'm robbing us of our own mystique or something. But How I Met Your Mother was a really scripted show. That's why when people want to get mad like around something Ted did, I was like, dude, I was contractually obligated to do those things. Like this is my job. This is my job to be truthful and bring this stuff to life. And it wasn't my job to hijack the script and say, you know what I think should really happen, because I write my own things. But Jason and I actually had this talk a bunch of times. we love writing scripts. We didn't think we'd be particularly good How I Met Your Mother writers. Like it came from the minds of Craig and Carter and the writing staff. It was a very singular world that had its own rules and its own logic. And we were just inside that, but we weren't the puppet masters.
Yeah,
I'm
curious, Josh, does the fact that you are a writer, and Jason too, like, does that make it easier to show up and not need to write or change what's written in How I Met Your Mother? Because I remember Jason would always say to me, we'd come up, we'd pitch him some idea, we'd say, hey, we're gonna do a big dance sequence, and okay, awesome, are you okay? And he would always say, I'm your meat puppet. Go ahead. He'd just say, I'm your meat puppet. And he kind of meant it. He's kind of like, tell me what to do, we're doing it. And he would just
I don't share that with Jason. Like, I know he felt more like, put me where you want me, you know, like put me in, coach. Like, I think he felt, I was very curious about what you guys were up to. Like I said, I always look forward to the script. I was both a fan and it's hard for me to watch things and not try to look under the hood and see a little bit like, oh, this is really smart how they're developing this character, or this character's coming back, and isn't that a funny callback? Like, I'm interested in the mechanics, but I also, and I think I said this before, I'm pretty clear about what I'm on set to do. I was not there as a writer. I was there to be the actor, and I had my actor hat on. But I think another kind of subtle subterranean part of me was like learning and observing and yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And you knew you were writing your own things anyway. You got to be a writer in other
exactly.
contexts.
And I got to be the master of that universe, and I didn't have to be in this one.
And Jason too.
And Craig, also, you're now at this point, you're all writing for Josh. So not to say that you're going, well, we'll kind of give him a thing and then he'll run with it. But you do know who you're writing for, which is different than writing a script and you don't know who you're going to cast it. You have to control that in a very different way. This, you're like, if I give Josh this word, these lines in this moment, I know Josh Radnor, and I want it to be a Josh Radnor expression of what we're doing, right? You're already up to that at this point in episode 5, right?
Yeah, and that is the gift of long form TV. You really get to know who you're writing for, but you also want to find ways to surprise yourself and surprise them and try new things. So you want to also watch that and not assume you know exactly how they're supposed to say it or supposed to do it. And Jason was especially good at always surprising you with how he said and did things. But what a gift to be able to write for people you really knew.
I felt some weeks you were seeing like, oh, I wonder if Josh or Jason or Kobe can do this. Like you throw it out there.
Well, this dance sequence, for example, is a perfect example.
But then there are other things that acquire a kind of power to them because you know, like when you wrote, right? Like you knew that I remember in an early episode, I grabbed my heart, right? And it became a very Mosby thing. I think you guys actually started writing that in.
Yeah, we did. And I think we referred to that one as the Mosby. I guess lots of things could have been that, but he just the Ted heart grab. Yeah, I mean, it's such a gift. It's like an intimate connection, and you don't get it, right? When you're shooting a movie or you're doing other things, you really get to know who you're writing for, and that is great. And yet you also have to surprise them and yourself.
Josh, you answered many people's questions, by the way, who have asked throughout the episodes about the grabbing of the heart, and is that you, and is that written, and what that is. So,
I think my memory of it is I did it
that was you.
First. I did, that was me, and then you guys liked it, and then it just became a thing.
You may have done it in an audition for.
I might have.
You may have. Like, I think we just took it. Yeah, I mean that's like physical things you guys would do were your own inventions, and that's such an important part of who a character is, the physicality of that character. Whether or not you're coming up with new lines all the time or not, you're inhabiting it in your body in ways that no writer could imagine. And so in that sense, you are constantly inventing material.
Right.
By the way, Josh, you said you're worried about robbing us of your own mystique. I would say that's the subtitle of this podcast. That is what
that's what we're doing.
So peek behind the curtain, folks. Here you go.
Vivisecting the mystique in real time.
This represents many questions about props. I think everyone is very inspired, Josh, by knowing the home of the blue French horn there over your right shoulder. So this was, be honest. Banana Shoe asks, be honest, who kept Barney's Mylar Silver Club shirt? AKA, does Craig have a secret night shirt? So with all of these hero props or these special props, I mean, did most of them sit around for 8 or 9 years and then it was a free-for-all? Was it like, I mean, we learned from Courtney Kang coming up soon that she was inspired to, it was hinted at that if she wrote something, she might be able to also walk away with the prop at the end.
And she may or may not still have that item and hold it up on camera in the episode.
It's possible, coming soon.
Next week.
So Craig, talk a little bit about what happens to the stuff. People want to know.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't rob it during the production because God knows we were a callbacky show. We brought things back and back and back and back on that show, and so they had to keep stuff. And then at the end, it was a little bit of a free for all. Josh was like, "I want the blue French horn." You were just so clear. You're like, "I want that one. That means the world to me." And,
there was no one else who would like claim to it. I think.
Oh my God!
I mean, maybe
weird.
Kobe could have, but I think it was. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's the only other one who could have.
Did someone take the jukebox? Did Carter take the jukebox?
No, I don't think anybody took the jukebox. I have one of the 2 red hero booths in my apartment.
Oh, wow.
There's if anyone watching on YouTube, there is the purple giraffe right there over my shoulder. We all took stuff. Wardrobe, things like that. Wardrobe was different. Wardrobe kept stuff because sometimes we call back, but I don't think anyone was ever going to call back that silver Mylar weird shirt.
I didn't take the red boots either, if that's your real question. No, I didn't take the red boots.
And I wrote you this little ditty to sing to you in New York City.
End of commercials. Back to show.
Henikismidulus. Apologies. Okay, how do you feel about the scene where Marshall and Lily jump out the window and how it affects the rest of the legitimacy of the story? How do you feel about this ridiculous decision and how it made the show different or unique? We talked a little bit about that, but many people were concerned about this moment. And, I in reading through so many of these questions, it's also that they've all watched the show in a compressed way, right? They've watched it quickly. They've read one book that is the How I Met Your Mother book. And when page 2 doesn't match with page 57, they see that as all one, whereas you're writing one page at a time, barely, right?
Right.
So I guess talk a little bit about that, but also this one notion of breaking reality the way Mr. Belvedere would not.
We did Mr. Belvedere.
Sorry.
That was a documentary. That was technically a documentary. It's a funny question because we started playing with the unreliable narrator so early on. The jump from the 3rd floor was one of the first times we sort of left reality completely via the narrator. And we talked about this in the episode, in the proper podcast episode about Okasim. We were giddy. We had this new toy of this narrator who could say, I don't remember the exact logistics. Maybe it was something like this. It's been 25 years since this story happened. And I loved that. That's how we all tell stories. Stuff that happened 25 years ago, your mind mixes things up. You embellish, you come up with transitions that didn't exist. Timelines intersect. Things that happened 2-3 nights apart or the same night. I stand by it. I completely stand by it. It is 100% the flavor of the show and the way people tell stories and distant memories, right?
I also think that there's you don't even realize you're doing it, but you'll say like, the night Uncle Marshall ate 10 tacos becomes like 37 tacos by the second decade of telling the story. Like, everything gets, like you said, embellished or inflated. Like, I remember I had an ex-girlfriend who I told her some statistic, and it was like 100,000. It was like 10,000, right? And then we were with some friends like a couple weeks later, and she retold the statistic. She goes, I heard. And she said it with such authority that 1 million, like she used 1 million. And I was like, first of all, I told you that and it was 10,000. Like she inflated it so outrageously. And it reminds you like, this is just a giant game of telephone. Like life is a huge game of telephone where it's like, you don't know where you are in the chain, like how the information has been distorted or degraded by the time it got to you.
And it's telephone to your past self. The more time passes, there's all these different versions of you playing telephone with it, and you can get that 10,000 to 1 million all on your own.
Yeah, it's that weird phenomenon. Like sometimes people tell a story so much they start thinking it happened to them.
Yeah,
and it did not happen to them. It's just they've somehow like taken on and digested the story, and they've told it so much that they've had a kind of visceral response to the story, and they become the protagonist of it. It's just strange.
There's the great Malcolm Gladwell episode of his podcast called Free Brian Williams, which is all about what he thinks actually happened when Brian Williams said he experienced something in a helicopter and didn't. And it's Malcolm sort of retelling of how memory does that to you.
I think future Ted is going, there was no other exit from that apartment. And if Marshall simply walked out of this like wine and cheese, like fancy party they were having, he couldn't have got away with that. So there had to have been another way. Let's just say it was this. There's
also an element of Ted has trapped his kids in his living room for a very long afternoon of stories. And he wants to be a good storyteller.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he's telling the story in the most kind of colorful, outrageous way. I mean, he's essentially describing a prison break, right? Like it's a prison break. Like
it's a prison break.
They're breaking out of this adult kind of like
Shawshank.
Stuffy. Yeah. And it's like, it makes the story better.
Yeah. In reality, Tim Robbins in Shawshank, he was just paroled. None of that stuff actually happened. That's just how he tells the story.
He remembered it that way.
He just remembers it that way.
Okay, so just this story obviously ultimately is about something, is about growing up and maturing and all of that. And so just a couple of comments on that, then a question. Bri For You Go just says, no question here, I love this episode. This episode completely changed my perspective about adulthood, as the whole show did, and uniquely showed that growing up doesn't have to be scary and boring and hard. It's all up to where you want to go with your life. It's a well-written proof. It is a well-written proof and comfort. Thank you so much for the okay, awesome masterpiece that is How I Met Your Mother. Love.
That's great.
Ross_WA says, Lily feels her and Marshall need to grow up and do grown-up stuff. Was that based on any real experience getting older and trying to toe the line between acting less silly but still having fun? And finally, same genre, value, it's a lot of use, .xx says, this rewatch is amazing. I'm currently journaling about each episode, and this podcast is gold. It complements each other so well. My question is, the line or moment that you crossed and realized that you were already through the super joy of youth and had passed into the hell of adulthood.
Jeez.
Discuss.
Oh my God. That's a good turn at the end. Well, I love it.
You know what? The first comment reminded me of, I started making music with Ben Lee, who's this great Aussie songwriter. And he did a post on Instagram that I thought was quite interesting. He said, I want to encourage more artists to be haters. And it was, a provocative opening, but his point was he has a huge hit song called Catch My Disease. And he just thought there's so much like cynical, dark stuff out there right now. He just wanted to write like an optimistic bop, right?
Yeah.
And it became his biggest hit because he was annoyed at what he was hearing on the radio, And he said, you can make different directions with your art and your life by it's just as informative to know what you don't like and what you don't want to be and the kind of art you actually have an allergy to, because it can redirect you towards something else as an antidote to that, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like when I looked out at I don't know if we talked about this, Craig, but like I think we both had dads who wore suits. Weren't we talking about that? Like we were talking about that with Carter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like we had dads who wore suits. My dad was a trial lawyer. He looked like he just was so tired at the end of the day. There was a kind of Willy Loman energy to him at the end of the day. And I think something in me was like, I don't think I want to wear a suit in my life. Yeah. Like I don't want to put on that uniform. And I think when you look out at the landscape of adulthood, when I was at Vassar one summer, there were all these older actors in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And man, they were drinking and having so much fun, and they were hooking up if they were not, if they were single, maybe they weren't single. I don't know. But I looked at them and I thought, oh my God, you don't have to lose your childlike spirit. You don't have to lose your appetite for fun and silliness, right?
Yes.
And I found like being in show business, being an actor allowed me to have a life of play and spontaneity where no one was ever like, well, it's time. Like you put on the tie, like stop having fun, start, despairing. Cause I was really afraid, much like Marshall, like I was afraid that adulthood would be just a drag or a bore snore. Was that a How I Met Your Mother phrase? Bore snore?
A bore snore, yeah.
Yeah, I was really afraid of it. And I'm 50 years old, and I have not found that to be the case. But I think I made certain decisions that and I'm not, by the way, we all have to make, decisions financially, and some of us have to, put aside things that aren't working and go. I'm not saying that, but I do think like with my friends, right? We still, even with you, Craig, like we still make the same jokes we were making 20 years ago. Like the same, they're in the same ballpark of silliness, you know? So I don't think you have to wine and cheese your way into the grave.
I think that's right. But I think when you're young, you think that is true. You think that's the qualification. That's the cost of adulthood. And I think when you're a kid and even in your 20s, you think that my daughter, Celia, just turned 9. And she's like this little sensitive soul. She's like this little writer and artist, and she just feels things very deeply, but she's also very funny, very silly. She turned 9 and she got a little sad at one point on her 9th birthday. And she said, like, I don't want to grow up. It's so clear to me being a kid is the best part and that adulthood is going to be terrible. She had this conception of like adulthood being so serious and you won't be playful, you won't be joyful and silly anymore. And I said to Celia, I get it. I remember thinking that stuff too. But just as an example, look at me, look at your father. Do you think I'm a very serious person, or am I silly and ridiculous all the time? She's like, you're completely silly and ridiculous all the time, literally all the time.
You're literally drumming right now.
Yeah. Like we can't even get you to be serious, even like when she wants me to be serious. And I said, so like, I'm one of the adults in your life and I'm serious very, very, very small percentage of the time. And she was like, okay, yeah. So I guess you are an example of a ridiculous adult for whom I have no respect. Great. And I can grow up and be a clown too. And but it comforted her, but it was interesting to see that perception. And I think that's that continues in your 20s. I remember feeling that way. I was like, my wife and I, she was, we went to college together. We got engaged. We were the Marshall and Lily of our friend group. That's why we wrote that into the show. And I do remember moments where I felt like we're supposed to act like grown-ups now, and our other friends, Carter and other people who weren't, they were out there having more fun. And that is what this episode was wrestling with. But I think it's interesting what you say, Josh, when you actually get there and you realize you can maintain your silliness and your play and your curiosity, that is a huge gift. And I don't think you understand that when you're younger, that you can do that.
But I also think there's something, my wife and I, she's younger than me, but we have a phrase, I don't know if I've said this on the, but instead of saying the night is young, we say the night is old. Like it's time to wrap this up. The night is old. And
Alek, you can say that to us when we're going too long in the podcast.
That's the night is old.
Okay.
But when I would see my parents, like I'd be going out and my parents were getting into bed, right? Like you're going out at like 9:45, 10 or whatever when you're 18, 19. And my parents were like, it was done. Their day was over.
Yeah.
And I used to think it was so boring and sad that they were climbing into bed at 9:15, 9:30. If I can get myself in bed at 9:15.
Oh, it's glorious.
Glorious.
It's so
like
glorious.
You think, I had a doctor years ago tell me when you're younger, you're looking for ways to throw off energy because you have so much of it. And when you get older, you look for ways to conserve energy. But the difference is, when you're younger and you see adults who are conserving energy by going to sleep early and waking up early, you think that their life is over and they're in some sort of like weird adult prison. The truth is they're psyched. They're psyched to go to sleep early and they're psyched to wake up early and the mornings are lovely. So you don't have the same life you had when you're a kid, but you do have, it's swapped out for fascinating, beautiful things. And you don't have to lose your spontaneity and sense of play.
Yeah, and that's what Ted says, essentially. Like, I can't wait to be boring with you at the wine and cheese party, Marshall. Right. That's the great, generous thing that he says, shouting because they all lost their hearing at the club, which is what makes that scene really funny. But that's the theme of the episode. I'll get there with you, and I will sit there being boring and old with you because that's the goal.
There's a line that actually, Josh, I quote from liberal arts all the time when I think about myself and I think about age. It's what Richard Jenkins says. I don't have the exact line.
I can help you.
When help me with it. You say the line before I ruin it.
Well, I think he says, I've never felt not 19.
Right. That he said that's the secret. Something like that. The secret is what they don't tell you or whatever it is. You always feel that young age. And I don't know if that is true for all adults. My father died very young in his 40s, and he was an accountant. He had the suitcase, he had the suit, and all of this, and he felt certainly a much older 46-year-old than I think I was. I'm a little boy. I definitely feel 19 and 18 and I don't feel a rush to grow up. And actually for me, what's hard is taking on positions of leadership where I think me I'm going to do this, but I'm 19. I can't do that. And they look at my haircut and they say, you're not 19. But that's always stayed with me, that I don't know if he says it as a good thing or a bad thing. It's just sort of a truth.
I mean, I think he says it as a thing that is both true and mystifying. Because he says, I look in the mirror and I don't see a 19-year-old staring back at me. I mean, aging is one of the most trippy, insane things we do, because I remember I was talking to my friend Jamie, who I met right out of NYU. He was just out of Northwestern, and he and his friends had written this really brilliant musical. And it was basically like How I Met Your Mother. It was all about like post-collegiate, first year out of college in New York City, being confused, being in love, being drunk and stupid. But it was beautiful. And I reconnected with him a couple years ago, and we're really back in each other's lives in a really great way. And I said, and he's got 2 daughters now, right? And I was like, isn't aging insane? And he said, yeah. I said, especially for us, our entire brand was that we were young. Like that was our whole thing. At some point in New York City, we're like, we're the young people. Like we're the new crop. And suddenly you realize like, I did this show Rise a couple years ago on NBC where I played this public school teacher, and there were all these high school kids, and they looked at me because they had grown up watching How I Met Your Mother and they'd seen other stuff I had done. I was suddenly like the elder in the room, and that happens very suddenly. It's like you one day you're the fresh-eyed kind of apprentice. I mean, it's kind of cool watching like The Pit. Are you watching The Pit?
No.
On HBO or Max, like Noah Wiley is this like seasoned veteran emergency room doctor, but in our memory, in our collective memory, he's like the cool, wide-eyed young guy first day on the job, and now he's the one taking through the youngsters through their job, teaching them the ropes. So that just happens naturally. I mean, I think I'm fortunate in that I both like being a student and a mentor. Like I like them both. And I still consider myself a student in a lot of ways, but I like giving advice when I have something to offer,
Yeah. Well, I think we're talking about what future Ted is essentially trying to do with his children writ large across the entire series in some ways, which is cool.
Before we close here, we actually have an audio question from Maya Rupert, a friend of the show. Craig, do you want to tell us a little bit about who Maya is?
Josh and I are both friendly with Maya, but Josh, you've met her in real life and I haven't, right?
I
think maybe you should talk about it.
I have. She's come to some of my shows. She came to my play at the Public. She's lovely. I mean, she works in democratic politics at like the highest levels. Yeah. She's incredibly Warren, I think. Thoughtful and sincere and motivated, but she also loves music and she loves comedy and she loves How I Met Your Mother, and she's just been really wonderful to both of us.
Yeah, really smart, really cool, really brilliant person. The kind of person you're just psyched is a fan of the thing you did, whether it's your music or your show. She's the best.
All right. Well, we have the rare audio question for this general question. Here we go.
Hey, Craig and Josh, it is Maya Rupert. Huge fan of the podcast, and as you know, huge fan of the two of you as well. Okay, Awesome has a huge place in my heart. I'm writing a book. It will be out in early 2026, and one of the sort of central metaphors that I use in the book is actually derived from this episode. I have something I call my Okay, Awesome list, which is basically a list of things that I don't like, but I don't want to admit because they are supposed to be awesome. And anytime someone suggested one of these things to me, I would, as like my own little inside joke with myself, I would say, okay, awesome, and then figure out a way to get out of it later. So my question is, what are on your Okay, Awesome lists? Were they the things that Ted and Coach Hickrell were discussing, or do you have other ones? I would love to hear.
That's a great question. I love that question. Definitely some of those. I think the one I pitched really hard was parades. I think that might have been mine because that Ted says twice in the list is that I really hate parades. That might have been mine. I've never been on a cruise, but they don't seem great. What are the other ones from that they said? The Super Bowl. Super Bowl can be anticlimactic.
New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve was in the episode too, which I thought was a nice little call forward.
I have a thing about certain like very fancy foods. I actually find disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay for ethical reasons to hate this, but I think foie gras is one of the worst tastes I've ever had. And also, like
well.
bone marrow, like in the thing. Get that away from me.
Yeah. My food version of that is not a fancy food, but just raisins. I think everything is made slightly worse by putting raisins in there. And there are people who just love it.
I hate raisins in things, but I don't mind a little red thing of raisins.
I'll eat the red thing. I'll be honest. I'll eat the red thing too. Just don't put them in.
Do you know? I have a weird one, and it's literally the main source of tension in my marriage.
Oh my God, Maya, you've gotten into some precarious.
Jordana is a legitimate fan of television in a way that I simply am not, and I know it's strange because I've made my living mostly on it. Yeah, I like making it. I don't have the patience and stamina to sit down and binge and so she really wants me to just sit there with her, and that's how she decompresses after that's her, and she doesn't glaze out or zone out. She can like really be present with me. Yeah. But we've struck up a kind of compromise where I will sit next to her and maybe I'll be on my computer or doing a crossword puzzle and I'll kind of half watch the show, but she really feels like she wants more of it. And for some reason, I can't do TV the way that most people do TV, which is like, I love this show. I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to watch a lot of episodes.
That's really funny.
We watched Adolescence and I watched all 4 in a day, and boy, was she proud of me.
But so she's not watching like dumb stuff. Adolescence seems
she has good taste. She watches good stuff. There's one show that I will not name that is absolute garbage. She watches.
Maya will text you that on the side, whatever.
But you know what? I almost enjoy that one more because I can make fun of the show over her shoulder and I make her laugh because she knows. She's not thinking she's watching something great. But
that's so funny.
Yeah,
I would add the circus and roller coasters.
She busted me. She says, I feel like I have to defend myself.
Oh my God.
Best day of my life when you watched
podcast first.
No, I just said that.
Oh, okay.
I said that.
Okay.
She said it was the best day of her life when I watched 4 episodes of Adolescence.
I love that she knew a spidey sense went off in Jordana when you said, okay, the biggest issue in my marriage is, and she just came from the other room.
He said a spidey sense went off with you and you just came from the other room knowing we were talking.
This.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
That's so
I won't name the show because there's nice people on it.
I love it.
She loves it.
Oh my God. Yeah, don't name the show. I would add one other thing for me personally: tropical beach vacations. Whenever I try to go like to a resort or somewhere like it's supposed to be great. My wife and I went on one on a day one. We stepped on sea urchins and became incapacitated. Like we could not walk for several days. We got like hundreds of sea urchin things. That just always goes wrong for me.
Jordana and I have tried. We keep trying beaches, and we just finally looked at each other and we were like, we don't like it.
At a certain point, I just went, I'm Irish. Yeah. I just want to. I want to be in the rain. It's great.
We like we're mountains and lakes people.
Yeah, me too.
And cities. I like cities. Anyway,
Maya, we are honored that you're putting that in the book, and everybody look out for Maya's book. She's a really, really smart and cool person and writer, and so thank you, Maya.
Well, the night is old, folks.
The night is old.
The night is old.
And that is another episode of General Questions.
General questions.
Thank you so much. Keep sending them in through Instagram, and we will keep on trying to answer them.
I am guilty. Please acquit me. All sins are forgiven in New York City.
How We Made Your Mother is hosted and executive produced by Josh Radnor and Craig Thomas. The show is produced by me, Alek Lev, and our co-producer is Doug Matica. Our audio producer and mixer is Alex Reeves at Point of Blue Studios. Artwork by John Morrow. Please follow, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice. It really does help the show. Our theme song is NYC by our own Josh Radnor. Special thanks to Lola Kennedy and Elliot Connors. Visit howwemadeyourmother.com to sign up for our Substack mailing list and for links to our social media. You can also click on the contact page to send us an email or a voice message. Your stories and questions are an important part of the show. Subscribe to Josh Radnor's Muse letters on Substack, Read Craig Thomas's published prose at craigthomaswriter.com, and you can subscribe to my Dead Father Society, also on Substack. To learn about how you make a difference, this show's ongoing campaign to raise money for congenital heart disease research, check out the Make a Difference tab at the top of our website. This episode was made possible by the support of Backyard Ventures, marketing provided by Tink Media. People will, in fact, dance.
The real question, it just hit me. Am I in love with you? Or just New York City?